Kier Starmer looks set to give the European Union £130 billion of your hard-earned taxpayers' money. This is his latest deal to attempt to undermine Brexit and to bring Britain back into the EU. Now, remember something. When we talk about the benefits of Brexit, they have deliberately not capitalised on any of our abilities to rule ourselves, any of our abilities to go it alone. And because of that, Brexit itself looks like a failure, but I will tell you, the opportunities it brings are absolutely astonishing, and we shouldn't be listening to Kier Starmer when he attempts to give away our money. And on this occasion, it's in order to undermine our defence and security by shackling us to the European Union once again, this time for military kit and hardware, and indeed this safe system, which is the European cooperation on security. Okay, I'm going to go through in this video every single example of the way that Kier Starmer is attempting to take Britain back into the European Union. Some of it's a bit technical, but I think it's important bearing in mind what we're getting to and how dishonest this government is truly being. Hello everyone, this is Andre Walker. Thanks so much for watching this important video about Britain's independence and indeed Britain's safety. Please do subscribe, but more importantly, please do consider a donation to the Patriot Fund. The link is in the description. If you give a donation, we send you a monthly update of everything that we're doing. We're supporting people who often aren't supported themselves when they are fighting for patriotic causes, whether that be the Women's Safety Initiative, whether it's giving cameras to people, or whether it's the all-important, what we're hoping to do soon, the media training, to get more of us phoning TV and radio shows and getting through to get our message across. If you donate, you'll be added to the mailing list, and at the end of the month, I'll send you out an update. Okay. Let's talk about what Kier Starmer is doing. So first of all, number one, he's going to be talking about the EU-UK deal, which is going to change. Number two, he's rebuilding political and security ties with the European Union. Number three, he wants to erase barriers to trade. So of course there is more alignment between our regulations and that of the EU. Number four, he wants to have some policy realignment without rejoining officially, but preparing the way to get there. And I'll give you a few other bits and bobs, a few tasting notes about what's going on. But let's go firstly to this 130 billion, which is the trade, defence and economic cooperation. In May 2025, Kier Starmer reached a brand new agreement with the EU. This deal covers areas such as trade, reduced checks, but more importantly, he's proposing to put 130 to 150 billion pounds into a new EU fund, which will look at military kit. So of course, what will happen? AirBus, or as I prefer to call it, the French government, will once again receive enormous amounts of money from the UK taxpayer, because believe me, the European Union has struggled without the UK to support it. But as part of this deal, in order to give the European Union 130 to 150 billion pounds, we've had to give them some concessions. From the deal with the EU is always, we don't get what we want, but we give them concessions anyway. And the concession that we've given them in order to be allowed to buy all this French aircraft and military kit, in exchange for that, we've offered to extend their access to UK territorial waters. So many of the things about Brexit and our independence, particularly our military independence, have gone by the wayside. Let me make a point to you that I think is extremely important. Always remember this. Ukraine would not be a country if it wasn't for Brexit. And the reason for that is very, very simple. We were able, as an independent country, to stand forward for Ukraine in a way that we wouldn't have been able to had we been shackled to the European Union. Now, many of you are sceptical about what's going on in Ukraine, but I think we can all agree that Vladimir Putin just invading and trying to destroy the country was not an acceptable position to be in. As far as I'm concerned, a lot of things shouldn't have happened in the run-up to it. And both countries, Russia and Ukraine, are corrupt former Soviet republics. Yes, it is a battle for oligarchs, but nonetheless, I think had Russia overrun Ukraine, things would have been significantly worse than they are now, and Britain was able to stop it. Rebuilding political and security ties. Well, look, Starmer has prioritised reset in security cooperation, so he says, and closer relations with Germany and France, and actively being involved in EU-led initiatives. So if you remember, when our good friend Nick Clegg said it was a dangerous fantasy that Nigel Farage said that there was going to be an EU army, Of course there's going to be, but Britain is going to be a member of it nonetheless. Now, I think we're better having British security through NATO. Now, bluntly, NATO is many of the same people. But the big advantage with NATO is you have the Americans in there as a moderating force. And by the way, if you're going to complain to me about Donald Trump and what he's done, damn bloody right, we pay for our own security. It is ludicrous that a wealthy country like Germany, or indeed go outside NATO, a wealthy country like South Korea, end up not having their own military because they rely on America. No. The Americans should be an additional benefit or an additional helper to us, but fundamentally it is the job of the United Kingdom to defend the United Kingdom. It's the job of Europe to defend Europe, and the fact that Donald Trump has forced the Europeans to believe that, I think, is absolutely true. As part of the reset, Kier Starmer is now a regular at EU events, saying that he prefers to be in Davos than England. Well, not a big surprise there. I think most of us would rather that he was in Davos than England as well. So on point number 3, practical steps to erase barriers. What they're now saying is new trade deals will significantly simplify border procedures, and the way that they will do that is very, very simple. We'll have much more regulatory alignment, and what that means is when the EU passes a law, we will take that law as well on standards on things. And this was the problem we were always having, because whilst the EU did make it easier to export, most people don't actually export. And so what was happening was you were having to have a sweet shop in Wigan jump through all these hurdles as if it were an exporter, when of course it did no such thing. And all of that red tape was incredibly costly locally, although I do accept that it did make exports much more easy. Okay, the youth mobility scheme. Whilst the deal's not fully settled, basically we're going to have free movement for under 30s. Now, of course, as we all know, free movement for under 30s under 30s were the principal beneficiaries of the free movement anyway. And so when we're talking about having a youth mobility scheme, it is precisely the same effectively as the old mobility scheme. Now, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. I think that we were wrong to not have some temporary barriers to entry, but I have no problem with free movement around the EU. My concern is immigration from the wider world outside of Europe, but certainly the number of Polish people that came immediately gave the United Kingdom a problem, and I think that that's something that we need to think about in future. But overall, I think similarly wealthy European countries, for us all to be able to bob backwards and forwards, ain't a particularly bad thing. The problem was the temporary barriers were not in place. Talking of barriers, Kier Starmer's allowed us to start using e-gates when we go to the EU. I did it when I went to Benidorm, so I think that's probably okay. Okay. So he wants policy alignment, point number 4, policy alignment without actually rejoining the EU. So there will be no single market return, but let's be totally honest. Once you realign, you might as well be a member of the European Union. Imagine every single law that's passed in Europe suddenly has to be applicable in the United Kingdom. What will they say after 10 years? We need to be rule makers, not rule takers, which is the comment they always make about Norway. But actually, my comment back is very, very simply this. Everybody believes in cooperation in Europe. The big problem is only some of us believe that it should be a Benelux-style country run in the French tradition. Many of us Anglo-Saxons disagree with that. Look at us. What was it? Denmark and Sweden had opt-outs. Is it Finland? Oh, God, I don't even know if it's in the EU. Norway's not in the... No, Finland is, Norway isn't, Iceland isn't. Even when you get to a country like Scotland. Oh, Scotland's so pro-European. Scotland's so pro-European that only 40% of the country voted to leave. Only 4 out of 10. Actually, and then if you look at England leaving the European Union, most of Northern Europe, most of the Anglo-Saxon countries have very serious misgivings about what's going on. But what is going on in Britain is very simply this. The reason that Kier Starmer is capitulating to the EU is because, like many, many people who are the elite in England, he hates British people, he hates English people, and he thinks the French are better. If you look at it, France has always been considered better than Britain. Mrs. Bucket called herself Mrs. Bouquet, using a French term for, I think, a bucket, if I'm being totally honest. Well, it's a bouquet of flowers, isn't it? But okay, But if you look at an expensive restaurant, it'll often be written in French. I think that goes back to 1066, where it was the French people who were considered posh. It's a pig in the field, it's pork on your table, because that's the French word. It's called cow, which is Anglo-Saxon in the field. It's called beef, which is French, on your table. And I think that we need to be much more proud of this country. And we need to say to Kier Starmer, he needs to stop capitulating to the EU. What he did in terms of trying to undermine that Brexit vote ought to have been a criminal offence. And in the United States, it would have been. And until next time, arrivederci and goodbye.